and welcome to SOLIDWORKS Skills video.
Once you have an assembly as shown here, this is directly from worksheet 6. Many times you'll want to go directly to a 2D drawing exploded with bill of material. That's what I will be demonstrating in this video. As you see, there are a few parts in here. Let's go ahead and create an exploded view, and then we'll bring that into a 2D drawing. As you may recall, we've added quite a bit of hardware to this, mostly these pan head screws. The first thing we'll do is to bring them out in an exploded view. So we'll create an exploded view. Notice it's up here on the menu. And it brings the feature tree out into the working area. Let's go down and select all of the pan head screws. So we'll click on the first one and on shift click on the last one, and now they're all highlighted. And when you're in the explode view, basically what you'll be creating are a series of steps of things to move and the direction in which to move them. In this demo I'll be showing a fairly simple procedure. Now notice we have an arrow in each of the three primary axes. I'm deciding that I want to have all of the screws move a considerable distance out away from the part. They've already been selected, so I'll drag them out to such a distance that they'll clear the next thing I'll want to drag out. Now generally when I'm doing an exploded view, I try to pick things that are on the outside, drag them the furthest, things that are closer in not quite so far, and this will lend itself well to the assembly. So let's now select the two clamps, click on the first one and then shift click on the second one. I'll drag the clamp out not quite as far as the screws. Then I'll click on the router, drag that out part way, and last but not least the mounting plate, and I'll drag that out about halfway. So you see that I've created a layered approach here, and if I rotate around you can see that things are fairly evenly spaced out. It is not hypercritical. The next thing I'll do is I'll go to the clamps, the shaft clamps out on the ends. I'll click on one, drag it out away, click on the other one, drag it the other direction, and that will allow me to then click on the slide bearings. I'll click on one, shift click, select the other one. Let's get this right. Click on one, shift click on the second one. Now they're both selected. Drag them out away. I'll do the same thing on the other side. One, shift click the other one, and I'll drag that in the other direction. And now when I accept this, notice that all the explosions that I've done here are listed in the steps. I will accept that, and now I have an exploded view. If I want to view what I've done, I would go into the configuration manager, and if I open this up you'll see that that exploded view is shown. It has a name. I can rename it, but I don't see a reason to right now. If I right click on this, I can animate the collapse, and then I can animate it in the other direction. You'll see that this window called the animation controller comes up, and if I push the play button it will animate the collapse. I can go the other direction. Let me close this for one moment. If I right click I can animate the explode, so I can go either direction, and as a matter of fact I can, with this animation controller, I can loop. So if I push play it'll pull it apart and then repeat that. If I reciprocate it goes apart and then together again. So you can see you've got some options. I can also change the speed. I can slow things down, go to half speed, so you can view better what's going on. I know some of you were interested in how to do some simple animations. Well, here is the simplest of the group. If I close this window, now I'm back in the exploded view. I can here collapse or explode in one quick step by right-clicking, right-click collapse, or right-click explode. So here I am with the assembly in an exploded condition, and let's move forward to creating a drawing from this explosion view. Now that we have a view with the explosion, let's go ahead and create a 2D drawing of this. We go to File, Make Drawing from Assembly, and then you get to choose what size drawing. I'll use a C landscape. I would say anything smaller than C for a drawing like this would be too small. I'll click on OK. You could use one of your templates, by the way. And I'll click on the current view and drag that over. That's the one that looks closest to what I want. You'll see in a moment how easy it is to change that view. It's kind of small. I'll use a custom scale. Let's try a 1:2. Good starting point. Again, this is something you can change at any time. But what I really want is I want to see the exploded view, not the collapsed view. So I'll right click on that view, show in exploded state. I may need to move things a little bit, and I'll accept that. So now I have this view that illustrates the various parts. Let's do a little bit of rotating using this 3D drawing view, and that will allow me to rotate things in such a way. Notice it's a little bit clearer here exactly how things will look, because it separates all of the parts, that nothing overlaps. So this is my selected view, and again I can always come back and change it. Let's add a bill of materials. I will go to Insert, Tables, Bill of Materials. I will accept the defaults, and then I'll put the bill of materials in the upper right corner. That's where it generally goes. Please don't put it elsewhere. And if you look at the bill of materials, you'll see there are item numbers, part number, which is the file name of the given parts, and a description, which in a few moments I'll show you how to change. On the far right, it shows you how many of them there are. So let's begin to put the callouts on here that will coordinate with that bill of materials. So I'll go to Balloon, and let's zoom in a little bit. Let's put a balloon first of all on one of the shafts. Now when I have the balloon, when it's not connected to anything, you just have a circle. However, when I move over to the edge of one of the parts, now I have a leader with an arrow. I'll click once, drag it up to a position, and there is a number. Now it's not necessary, it is no error, but it's not necessary to number each and every part of a given kind, just so that you have a visual reference for any given kind of part. I'll click on OK. Let's do a little more ballooning. I'll do this with the slide bearing, do the same thing with one of the shaft clamps, with the bracket, and I try to put the balloons in a place where they're off by themselves, clearly visible, and not going to interfere with anything. And notice that the number that shows up inside of each of those is coordinated with the item number in the bill of materials itself. So I'll do one of the screws. That'll be a number 7. I'm done with that. And let's confirm, yep, the screws are number 7, the clamp is number 6, and on and on. So there I am with a nicely annotated view. I can move the view a little bit, and if you want to change the scale, you can go back in. If you want to change the orientation, you can go up to 3D drawing view. So far so good. We have a decent looking assembly shown in exploded condition. Now that we have a 2D drawing of the assembly, keep in mind that one of the purposes here is to illustrate for the viewer how things go together. One way to emphasize that is to add dashed lines that would indicate how parts travel through each other and then end up in their destination. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go over to the assembly, And here I have, for example, a number of screws. Now, obviously, they end up going into things. So let's show how one particular screw travels through a bracket and then ends up through a clamp and then ends up in a bracket. And in fact, this screw right here, I'll highlight it. This screw in particular, the one that I'm pointing at, is the one in question. Okay, so let's go ahead. Up on the menu bar, you see Exploded Line Sketch. So I will click on that, and let's find the particular screw. And what we're going to do is we're going to locate a feature on the beginning point and a matching feature on the destination. So the beginning point here would be that circle. There's an arrow indicating the direction. Let's click it the other way because that's the direction we want to go. And we'll go over to the mating hole in the clamp, and there now is a line that is illustrative of how that screw is meant to be inserted. So I'll click on OK, and sure enough, there is a dashed line going from the screw over to that hole. Now it doesn't stop there, it continues on to the bracket, so let's continue. Click on the extreme diameter of that hole in the clamp. Again, the arrow is pointing the wrong way. I can click it the other way and go over to the bracket itself, and there I am. I'll right click, and now I have the complete transit of that screw through the clamp to the bracket, and it's easy for the viewer now to understand how that goes together. Let's do the same thing for one of the shafts, through the bearing and into the shaft clamp. So let's do the upper shaft. Click on the periphery. I'm going to leave the arrow pointing the wrong way for a moment. You'll see how we fix that. I'll go to the interior, and you can see the purple line indicates, well, it doesn't show what I want it to do. So here's a good opportunity to fix it. Now this one is correct. It's this side that needs fixing, so I'll click on the little arrow, make sure it's highlighted, and there it is fixed. Right click on it. We're almost done with that particular feature. We're going to continue through from here. Now the arrow is pointing the right direction. I'll go over to the bracket, right click, and accept it. So here I am. I have now illustrated how two particular parts traverse in the assembly. You do not have to show every example of every like part. Show what you need to, use your judgment, what makes sense. Now we'll accept this whole thing. Now let's go over to the window, which is the assembly drawing, the 2D drawing, and observe that sure enough there are the dashed lines that I just created showing how the hardware and the shafts. Now if I find that I want to change the orientation a little bit, make it clearer, click on the 3D drawing view, rotate things. Let's do that a little bit so that the screw kind of stands off by itself. Sometimes it takes a little fussing to find the most optimal view. That one looks pretty good. We'll stop there. Again, it can be changed at any time. So this little section was about how to add these lines that show how things go together. Looking a little more closely at the bill of materials, you see that there really aren't part numbers. They're more kind of names of parts, and the description fields are empty. I will show you how to correct that. Let's say we want to apply an actual part number to the shaft and give it an internal name, a description that will carry through to the drawing itself. So I can click, I'll go over to the assembly. Let's open up the shaft, right click, open part, and here I am in the part. If I go over to the configurations tab and right click on the tab which is called default, you'll see that there's a properties item. If you click on that, that gives me the opportunity, you see the word description here, I can change the description to be, for example, 12mm shaft. And there's a checkbox. Yes, I do want you to use that description in the bill of materials. So I'll check that, click on OK. So now if I go back to the drawing, you'll see that in the bill of materials the description has now carried through what I just typed. The next thing I may want to do is to change the part number. I don't want to do it as an override here because later on if I use that part in yet another drawing it won't track. So let's actually do it the right way. I'll go back to the shaft part, and the way you would do it is to do a file, save as. It will ask you, you have three options. You can do a save as. This will change the references, but you have to have the files open. So you have an assembly that has a reference to this part. If I do a save as a new part number, those references will be updated. Well, that is in fact what I want to do. The other two options, you can read what they do. We want the top one right now. So I'll go ahead, click on save as, and instead of calling it like 12 millimeter shaft, let's call it stainless steel shaft, or SSS 12 millimeter 001. I'm just throwing out an arbitrary number that looks like a part number. When you're working for a company, they'll have their own part number methodologies. I'm putting it here for illustration purposes only. So I do a save. You can see that the name up in the top of the window up here has changed. And if I go back to my drawing, I have to do an update. You see, by the way, I had not shown this before. Up here is the rebuild button. If things have changed and you see that the drawing has not, it's always safest to click on the rebuild button, and when I did so it changed the part number to track the change that I just made, this SSS 12 millimeter 001. So now I have begun the process of doing documentation that conforms with, let's say, the company that I'm working for right now. Alright, so here we are in the assembly. We have just a couple of other things to cover before we complete out here. The first is how to change or add things to the exploded view. For example, let's say you decide you want this router to be depicted out of line. So let's move it. You have your exploded view here on the left. Just for reminding you, you want to be in your configuration tab. Open up the default, open up your exploded view. There are the exploded steps, including the screws, the clamps, and so on that you created earlier. Let's add an additional motion to this. I will right click on the exploded view, edit the feature, and here's the list of items 1 through 9. We're going to add a number 10. So I'll click on the part I want to move, the router. I'll drag it to the side. I'll click OK, and now we're done with that change. And notice it added it as a step 10. Let's say we decide we want the screws to be further away. Well, that's step number 1. We can right click on that and we can edit the explode step 1, and with this I can drag the parts to a new location, accept it, and notice that the exploded line followed the part, so I don't have to redo any of that. The next thing I may want to do is to add an exploded line, one that doesn't follow a simple straight line. For example, this upper right screw goes over to the upper right corner on the mounting plate, but then has to take a dogleg over to where the bearing is now depicted. I will show you how to do that. So we'll go into exploded line sketch, and as before we'll click on the periphery. Let's get the arrow pointing the right way, out, and we'll go have this go over to the mounting plate, the hole in the mounting plate, which is this guy here. We're good so far, but now we have a bit of a quandary. How do we get the line to go over from here to the bearing, which is shown as exploded, over to the side? SolidWorks makes it quite easy. We click on that. Let's get the direction right again. Going out, and this time we'll go over and just do the same thing. We'll click on the hole that it goes to, and you'll see that SolidWorks provides automatically that Z-shaped path that would go from the source to the destination. Let's say we're happy with that. We'll click on everything. We'll finish that sketching. And let's go back to the drawing, the W6 assembly. And sure enough, there it shows the dashed lines. If I decide that I want to change things in the way they're depicted, I can move my view a little bit to try to make things clearer. That looks actually pretty good right there. But you decide what makes you the happiest. Try to have as few things overlapping as possible. So I will accept that. Go up to the checkbox, say OK. And now things are starting to get clearer yet as to how they go together.
Thank you for watching. This video is part of a series created by Neil Rosenberg and Joseph Caswell. All rights reserved.